Yeah.
One of my buddies had I got a couple questions in here. They were wondering. I guess we can weigh in on. He had one question on censorship of press, but I think we kind of went into that as in kind of everybody kind of has that censorship. Basically, every superpower at this point, in my opinion. But he asked about any thoughts on the current route of one belt, one road through Black Sea and how it relates to monopoly of trade. I guess we kind of did go into that a little bit because I guess how I see it honestly is, and correct me if I'm wrong or you see it differently, it's kind of like the 21st or 22nd century version of the Silk Road kind of
Yes.
being re-put back together,
Yes.
just done in a new high-tech way.
Yes. I mean, that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's the Belt and Road Initiative. If you look at the full name, it's actually called the Silk Road Economic Belt and Silk Road Maritime Roads, right? And so I want to go back to the censorship a little bit because I'm actually against censorship. I don't like
I mean, I'm not trying to excuse
yeah,
for their
I
censorship
because
and
I
trying to
was
say, well, we all do it, so it's not okay because all of them do it.
because I was at one point back in I think 2017 I had a Chinese social media account on Weibo, and at one point I had 5 million
I
followers.
remember you talking about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that they just took it away from me.
Because you said
I was very
you had a
upset.
lot more outlets and you were able to get a lot more information
Yeah.
because people were just sending you stuff, right?
Yep. All I have to do, like, if I see some stuff in mainstream media, Western mainstream media report about Xinjiang, so I just ask a question on my Weibo, and then, bam, I will have like Kazakh Uyghurs from Xinjiang in my replies, in my comments. It will tell me what's going on with their lives, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is what actually going on versus what the English language media reporting is reporting. So I was very upset when they took away my 5 million follower Weibo account.
So you definitely are not fond of the censorship.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Chinese censorship. But having said that, right now I see the US is moving toward that model. Like Twitter not now is more and more like Weibo. Because the reason I gave
YouTube where we're at, it follows that model.
Yes, because the reason I gave up on Chinese social media on Twitter, because I felt like at least I can say more stuff on Twitter without getting censored. But now, I mean, I've been getting reported left and right on most of the stupid stuff. And like people just do mass reporting, like they do brigading, because they didn't like what I said maybe on Hong Kong protests, or maybe they didn't like what I said on Ukraine. They will just focus on the stupidest. Can I say? Can I swear on here? I don't know.
No, you can swear on here, definitely.
They just focus on the stupidest crap, and then like I posted a mean image, right, of like dogs fighting, right, with the labels on the dogs, the Russia, EU, Ukraine, and US. Of course, it was EU and Russia was fighting over a piece called label Ukraine, and another dog coming from behind with the label US.
Yeah, I saw that.
Fucking the US dog. I got reported for that image. You know what they call this? They say it violated Twitter rules for discrimination against particular nationality. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. It's literally a mean image. I had to take it down.
We're talking about literally, basically 4 different groups of mostly Caucasians. Yep. So you're discriminating against the people who are basically the hegemony of the world.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm apparently discriminating against people of I don't know whether they say I'm discriminating against the Europeans or the Americans. I mean, like,
but either way, America is still at this point, what is it, like over 55-60% still what Indo-European, nation predominantly. Like earlier today, I got called racist because I said that I tend to be more careful when I go into predominantly white neighborhoods. and I'm racist.
How
And
is
I'm
that? How
like,
is that for being racist? I mean, like, it's like it's people who never experience racism in their life will say shit like that because if you are like me, who is a 13-year-old waiting in the freaking Chicago snow, waiting for my school bus to take me to Kingwood Academy in an hour and a half ride, and some white teenager drive up and spit me in the face and then drive away and call me chink. Yeah, you would understand, what racism is in the United States. But these people who grow up in white suburbs, like who never have to deal with that all their life, probably because they're white, they were like, who are you to talk about race? Like, yes, I'm very qualified to talk about racism because I've been target of it.
Or they tell you that you're or they mock you like you're making it up and like you're over exaggerating things. And I know, especially if you were coming to the U.S. at that time, there definitely had to be people don't realize you go back a good 20 years, things were much worse on the racial front and a lot more brutal.
Very open. They're still open. Like, see what happened was the political correctness drove all the racism underground, right? They didn't go away. The racism didn't go away.
It never went away.
They just don't bring up in the polite conversation anymore. But you know these guys, they still behind, in our circles, they still talk shit about us.
Oh yeah. I had another question here. Let's see. Hamza was asking, I guess a statement, and I guess I'll let you push back and what you think. And by the way, everybody, he lives in Bali. He's not living in China, so he's not responsible for everything that China does or doesn't do. He's just somebody who follows it, and I feel is very qualified to speak on it and give us an inside perspective. So
I'm not the Chinese government spokesperson.
Yes, that's what I want to say. He says China is taking part of India, Kashmir. What are your thoughts on India and Kashmir and that take?
Okay, so first of all, Kashmir is a disputed territory. It's just a disputed territory as defined in United Nations, right? If you go look up a UN resolution on Kashmir, it will specify Kashmir is a disputed territory. It's the most dispute is actually between Pakistan and India, but now India has a very specific definition of Kashmir, which push it into Chinese administered territory. That's a whole different story. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. It's for me. I think it's more complex than just India, China.
Yeah, because that is because the British, when they drew up the British-Indian borders, they decided to choose a maximus claim on a map. They drew a line on the map and say, this is now part of British India. And when they actually never even send troops or control that part. And of course, China would not recognize that. It's like, what? You just drew a line on the border, expect me to respect that? Hell no. So this is a problem resulting from colonialism. It's a legacy of literally result of colonialism. You can go look up. If you want to understand the problem between China and India border issues, there's a great book by I think Neville Maxwell called India's China War, and he was a journalist who was based in India, and he had access to the secret Indian military report that was compiled after the war, which Indian government still refused to to open to the public. But because he obtained the secret document, he had a lot of material to work with when he write his book. Let me make sure I got his name right. I think it's Neville Maxwell, India's China War. You can just search this. You can it's by Neville Maxwell, published in 1970. It's a very detailed book in English, by a Western journalist, so less China bias, to about the actual border issue. I highly recommend.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to let me put that in my little phone to go back and check that up. Neville Maxwell.
Neville, India's China War. That's a book. Yeah, okay. It's very, very, very well documented how the British colonial authority in India, they artificially created this border problem by literally drawing a line on a map.
Yeah, I see they got a bunch of questions as far as India, Kashmir, and stuff like that. That's not where I want to focus most of my energy into border disputes. That gets messy and complicated.
Exactly.
So apologies to my friends out there, because it's not like Carl can do much about those issues, and they're all complex anyway.
I don't have a direct line to the PLA, to the PLA border patrol in the Himalayas.
Well, speaking of another border dispute, because I kind of, when it gets to the point when it looks like it's going to be possible hot war, that's when it starts to get my antennas up, and I actually want to start focusing in on it, because then it starts to get to a different level. What are some of your thoughts on Taiwan?
Yes.
And what's going on with that? Because one issue, I've definitely been following the whole Taiwan, Australia, New Zealand issues and with mainland China, and it's been a lot of back and forth. And then there's very provocative words flying back and forth from people on both sides. So I'm just kind of wondering, like,
I'll try to be brief. So Taiwan Island.
Well, I'll say you can go as long as you need. Okay. It's just a matter of how much time you have, because
I have plenty of time. We can.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so Taiwan has a special history because in 1894, first Sino-Japanese War, Japan defeated China, and as a result, China was forced to give up the island of Taiwan to Japan in the Treaty of Shimonoseki, and Japan occupied Taiwan, turned it into a Japanese colony for 50 years until 1945, after the Japanese defeat in World War II, after which they had to give up Taiwan back to China, and then Chinese Civil War happened. The communist victory on mainland China drove the nationalist government of Chiang Kai-shek to Taiwan Island, and then in 1950, just before Mao ordered PLA to cross Taiwan Strait to liberate Taiwan, United States in June 1950, the Korean War broke out. And then United States suddenly decided, okay, this is a war against communism, so we got to protect Chiang Kai-shek regime on Taiwan from the communists. They're sending the 7th Fleet into Taiwan Strait. China at that time didn't have a navy, so there's nothing they could do. They couldn't send PLA across Taiwan Strait anymore to take Taiwan. And from 1949 to 1945 to 1987, Taiwan was ruled as a military dictatorship. Martial law wasn't lifted in Taiwan until 1987, right? And there's something called the White Terror on Taiwan. Anybody who is suspected of communist sympathies and being a communist, you get killed and you get jailed, right? And that's how they killed off all the real leftists on Taiwan. So after that, what opposition left on Taiwan is the kind of the petit bourgeois opposition to the Chiang Kai-shek, Chiang Kai-shek already died by 1987, but Chiang Kai-shek's son, to the KMT regime on Taiwan. So in 1996, that's when Taiwan held its first election. This is kind of the wave of so-called democratization happened, occur around the end of the Cold War, when places from Taiwan to South Korea finally transitioned from military dictatorship to an electoral liberal democracy, so to speak. But what happened is that Taiwan has never been recognized by any country as an independent country. There's about like handful of 10 nations in the world that recognize the government on Taiwan as Republic of China, right? So that's kind of holdover from the Chiang Kai-shek's fleeing from mainland to Taiwan. So the official name on Taiwan is still Republic of China. But the any country who established relationship with People's Republic of China, whose capital in Beijing, is they have to agree to the condition that there's only one China, and then the PRC is the sole legitimate government of China. So even United States does not recognize the government on Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
It does not recognize Taiwan's independent stature. No government in the world recognize Taiwan's independent stature. The few countries that recognize the government of Taiwan recognize it as Republic of China. So this is a legal situation. Now covering the historical and legal ground, China is not in a hurry to force the issue on Taiwan right now, because time is on China's side. Like I explained, there's tremendous changes happen in China in the last 40 years. The most tense period in the cross-strait relationship was actually 1958, when hundreds of thousands of artillery shells were exchanged on between PLA and the offshore island of Kinmen, which is controlled by the KMT forces. During that time, United States had a plan that if PLA crossed the waters to invade Kinmen, United States would use nuclear weapon on mainland China.
Wow, really?
This was revealed just last year by Ellsberg. Like the guy. Yeah, he finally.
Daniel Ellsberg.
Yeah, Daniel Ellsberg finally came out and reveals this very interesting history. In 1958, U.S. was prepared to use nuclear weapon on mainland China. I guess where they stationed those nuclear weapons, the station on Taiwan. The U.S. had nuclear warheads and nuclear tipped missile stationed in Taiwan from 1958 until 1970s. U.S. at one point during the Vietnam War, U.S. stationed total of 30,000 U.S. military personnel on Taiwan, right? And Taiwan basically became another U.S. military colony, just like Okinawa.
Or the Philippines, and many. Yeah.
Yes, and then as a result of Nixon's visit to China, they come to a deal. They signed what's so-called Shanghai Communique between PRC government and U.S., where U.S. agreed that there's only one China, and then U.S. start pulling its military force. Finally, by 1979, by the time U.S. and China formalized their diplomatic relations, all the U.S. military personnel were pulled back. But Trump tried to reverse that. During the Trump administration, they send in some U.S. Marines, a handful of U.S. Marines in Taiwan, ostensibly to protect the U.S. diplomatic compound. The U.S. don't have a formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan, but they have this kind of called the U.S. Taiwan relation office. Like it's a de facto embassy. So they claim because it's a de facto embassy, so we need to send in the Marines.
Let's say what it really is. It's basically a safe house for American forces, i.e., CIA and State Department, to run amok into Asia and be able to run covert missions and then have a safe spot to run back to.
Exactly. I mean, the problem with U.S.-China tension, I mean, you can go back as long as 2001, just before 9/11. I don't even know if people still remember the Hainan spy plane incident.
Yes, I remember it.
Rumsfeld, when Donald Rumsfeld, he ordered increased surveillance plane flight around Chinese to buzzing the Chinese coast. So what that led to was increased confrontation. And finally, there was a collision between a U.S. spy plane and a Chinese MiG fighter. And the Chinese MiG fighter went down, and the U.S. spy plane did a forced landing on the Chinese island of Hainan. And then U.S. made a huge deal in the mainstream media, claiming they're somehow held hostage and like even the crew said they've been treated well, and then they complained that China wouldn't let them fly the planes back. Eventually, they have to chop the planes into pieces and ship back to U.S. But like, first of all, why are you flying spy planes in China in the first place? but that was turned around in the U.S. Media.
Well, that's what the U.S. does. The U.S. says, well, we're going to fly planes over your area and spy on you, but it's not allowed for you to do that to us.
Yes,
because that's what they got all ticked off, and they've recently been talking about that with Russia. And I'm like, aren't you guys the same one that were flying the U-2 planes over Cuba back during the Cuban Missile Crisis because you guys were worried about Russia being involved, and that's what led to the 50, 60 years of sanctions that went on that nation now?
Yeah, and then also during the Korean War, U.S. drew up this so-called air defense identification zones around Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. And people can Google search air self-defense identification zones for Taiwan. You'll look at the map and you will laugh because half of that zone is over the landmass of mainland China.
Yes.
And so when you hear in the U.S. media like since last year about Chinese fighter jets violating the the Taiwanese airspace, they're actually talking about Chinese aircraft flying over the air self-identification zone, right? Whenever that happens, I just show the map. I just post a map of the air identification zone.
Well, yeah, it goes into like what everybody always talks about, how they're like, well, China is doing this or Russia is doing this. It's like, okay, but is anybody focusing on what they're doing? It's kind of like, if you watch NBA and like they call a foul on somebody and it's like you don't see what the guy before actually did. You missed the foul which he did is why he fouled him back. And that's what I feel like our media does all the time. They don't point out anything the U.S. is doing that brings back these, because for every action, there's a reaction, correct? Yep. And we're not focusing on the action that's causing these reactions.
And also the reporting in U.S. make it sounds like Chinese fighter jet is flying directly over the Taipei or something, but that's not happening. If you actually, people can follow the Taiwan Defense Ministry Twitter account. They post every PLA flight path, so-called intrusion into Taiwan's air self identification zone and the air defense self-identification zone, ADIZ. And you will see the PLA flight is flying closer to the Chinese mainland than anywhere near the island of Taiwan. This is what people in U.S. are up in arms about Chinese fighter jet flying around Chinese coast. This is why we are getting so upset and so self-righteous about, and when they talk about U.S. spy planes, they're like, we are operating in the international airspace.
But isn't this almost the same situation?
Yes.
That Russia-Ukraine situation.
Yes.
This is almost virtually the same thing going on, right?
Having said that, of course, China know what it's doing when it send its jets to fly into the Taiwan ADIZ zone. It's to send a signal. It's not to send a signal to Taiwan because they understand the relationship, the cross-strait relationship it's not really a problem between mainland China and Taiwan. It's really a problem between U.S. and China.
Yeah, these are all proxy wars.
Yes. They're sending the signal to U.S. because what U.S. is doing, remember, Nancy Pelosi was claiming that she's going to visit Taiwan, which will make like the highest
That's not a good idea.
Yeah, that will make the highest level U.S. official visit to Taiwan since 1970.
With Nixon, right?
Yeah, since Nixon visit to China, they have stopped that. And Nancy Pelosi said, I'm going to go. What is she going to do there? And of course, China protested, and that next day, Nancy Pelosi announced that she has COVID.
Yes.
so very conveniently, she has COVID. So, but I guess to for a face-saving measure,
it's like, damn it, COVID came up, so I guess I can't do it now.
Yeah, for face. So now she is saying she's negative now, but she's not resuming her trip to Taiwan.
Oh yeah,
anytime
and that should be the question. Okay, so if it was COVID, why aren't you reassuming that position? I mean, why aren't you
Yeah,
going to go on ahead and do that trip? I mean,
yeah,
this reminds me of also something kind of off topic, but Martin Luther King, when he was going to go to the Holy Land and go into the Levant, he canceled his trip to go there, and he was going to take over 200 of his congregation with him. Once that trip got canceled because of the 6-Day War, he never reassumed that trip. And then once they asked him about it a little bit, you know, they had the mountaintop speech, and then he gets assassinated shortly after. Kind of weird to me, but I just wanted to throw that out there because the correlations of, oh, well, why didn't you reassume this, are both questions that hang out there.
So I guess as a face-saving measure, several other U.S. congressmen went to Taiwan. So you got Lindsey Graham, right? Like the ultimate hawk.
Yeah, obviously you can tell I don't like Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham went to Taiwan with 6 other congressmen. You know, they flew around, you know, show support. I mean, this is all kind of like, what did you accomplish by using the U.S. taxpayers' money, flying to Taiwan for 24 hours? What did you accomplish?
I feel like they should just rip the mask on it, or off for the people who really have, you know, some interests which don't really, are a little sketchy. Just go ahead and send Mitch McConnell. Because if anybody, Mitch McConnell, he got even shakier ties going on with China. I mean, in all the wrong ways. Am I wrong?
I mean, like, this is, I mean, it's in Taiwan right now. There's a lot of political theater. But I don't think it's not in China's interest to force the issue right now, because you know, people make analogy between Ukraine and Russia versus China and Taiwan. I will argue it's very different, because one of the reasons Putin may have decided to push into Ukraine now is because, you know, NATO has been arming Ukraine since 2014 at increasing rate, and if Russia wants to do anything militarily, they better do it sooner than later, because later Ukraine just going to have more Javelin anti-tank missiles. They're just going to have more military hardware and more training. Whereas the equation on you know, mainland China and Taiwan is very different, because every day the mainland China's strength is growing, like position of strength is growing and growing with the Chinese economy. So right now there's actually a talk among the U.S. Military circles that the U.S. actually only have a limited time window to contain China, because in another 10-15 years, Chinese economy will have escape velocity.